Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer Sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, our audience, our viewers, our friends, our relatives, those interested in the 1950s, that wonderful decade where it was fun to grow up. Don't you think that, Jackie? It was fun.
Indeed.
Yep, fun to grow up in the 1950s. And the guests that we have on our 1950s Fun Chat believe that too, because that's what they share with us. And maybe you feel that same way as you watch this. Oh, that was a great time. Or, oh, I can identify with what their guest is saying. And we have another great guest today who has had a very unusual life in the 1950s. And we certainly want you to have your ears on, because you will find this is a really fun chat. And Jackie, happens to be number 62. Wow, we've been at this a while. And you know what? Some people will say to us, oh, how do you ever find people who want to talk on your broadcast? And it's easy. We just are very enthusiastic about what we do. Plus, people want to talk about their experiences in the 1950s. So we welcome the guests who come to us and say, we'd like to be on your show, or we welcome the opportunities for people from Facebook or those who watch this program, to even friends and relatives, to give us ideas of people who to contact, who would have interesting stories. You might not think you have an interesting story, but it's interesting, right, Jackie?
Indeed. And let's get started with the program without further ado, except I have a couple things to say, and that is, guests, please look at the viewers, look at the bottom. You'll see that beautiful purple banner running across the bottom. It says www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. So if you go to that site, you'll find out about the authors, about our book, about the vendors who are we are so grateful that they're handling our book, and about this fun chat. All of the previous chats are listed right there, and you can just click on any or all of them and check them out. Also, in the upper right hand corner, you'll see a beautiful picture. It's a North Dakota sunset, which wraps around our book. It has the silhouette of a windmill appropriately, and then the two little sisters down the right hand side. And you'll also see a white dot. Now that white dot is a very special as you get to hold that book in your hand, you'll see that it is a National Independent Press Award that was won this year in the regional nonfiction category, and it is distinguished favorite was the title it was given. So without further ado, as they say, let's welcome our guest. Her name is Pat Spilseth. She was born in 1944 in Glenwood, Minnesota. Her husband is David, and he's a retired American Airlines pilot. They had 2 children. She grew up in a family of one sister who was 8 years younger. She says that of her sister that she was the tomboy and Pat was the scholar. Well, one of the most interesting things about Pat is that she grew up in a jail. Now, how many of you can say that? This was in Glenwood, Minnesota, and she lived in the center of town there in the courthouse and the jail. And she has some very interesting things to say about this Pope County jail. This is near Alexandria, which is about 130 miles west of Minneapolis. So her dad was the sheriff, elected in 1952. But without any more further ado, welcome, Pat. We would like to hear that story.
Hi, Pat.
Hi there. Hi there. Can you believe I even had a few dates that I even when they had to pick me up and go past the prisoners
Yeah.
to get me
Yeah.
something else.
Well,
That's probably a pretty special story that most young ladies cannot talk about, is having their home in a jail and having their dates come to pick them up in a jail.
Exactly. How many
so,
people do you know that grew up in the jail?
oh.
I don't.
So begin at the
Yeah.
beginning, please. 1952, your father was elected sheriff.
Yes.
Continue on.
He didn't like campaigning. He didn't like having to do selling himself. He thought his record should speak for itself.
Mhm.
But he was a very stern sort of man. Thank goodness he had my mother, who was the lively dancer. She was fun loving, and he needed that from the pressure that he had all the time.
Uh-huh.
She was the matron, by the way, at the jail, cooking all the meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and lunches in between at 10 and 3 in the afternoon. And she didn't get paid a nickel for
Oh my
anything that she
goodness.
did.
What kinds of food would she prepare, Pat?
Oh, she made homemade soups with rutabaga in there even.
Yes.
And roasts were real big. My dad would go deer hunting and pheasant hunting, but the the venison lasted us throughout the winter. Yeah, he would bring it down to the locker plant, and it was packaged, and there was hamburger, and there were steaks and roasts and so on. And I don't really like venison, even to this day. Enough is enough. There's a
Yeah.
taste to it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, did she use recipe books in order to plan these meals, or had she been trained by her mom, or she just learned to cook on her own?
Well, she went to Cal College, which is now the University at Morris, University of Minnesota at Morris, but they called it the Cal College because country kids didn't have a high school when she was growing up in Starbuck area.
Oh.
And she learned a lot of cooking there and entertaining. But remember the church cookbooks? They were real big always
Yes.
that she used.
Did she ever make many hot dishes?
Oh, yes, with hamburger
Yes.
and noodles and onion and tomato always. Yeah.
Did
But
she allow?
we've
Did she?
added mushroom soup today now to those
Yeah.
casseroles.
Did she allow the prisoners to suggest foods to cook?
Oh no, but we would serve the prisoners. I got to serve the prisoners many times because we'd bring there was a metal tray with metal dishes because you didn't want to have anything breakable that they could hurt themselves with or anything.
Mhm.
And we'd slide it into the bullpen. The prisoners were in cells. There were 6 cells inside the bullpen, it was called. That's all bars around it. And there was a slot at near the floor that you could slide the food through. It was, yeah, no, they didn't suggest anything, but they liked Mom's cooking. They kept coming back for more always, so that was good.
Tell us about that, Pat. Where you said they kept coming back for more. Did you have prisoners who came time after time?
Exactly. It seemed like every October we'd have a couple that were repeat offenders. And maybe it was the dark days of October or November or the cold or something, but it was pretty nice. They had a warm place to sleep and good food. They had Zane Grey novels to read, paperback novels in the jail cells, and it wasn't a bad life. For 3 months, they'd get, if they got a DWI or driving without under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, yeah, they were, and it was interesting. We had Verdi, pretty boy Verdi, who loved the girls, and they loved to come and talk with him. He would always tout his strengths, of course, which were really quite few. Then we had Blackie the Indian, who was an acrobat, and he had a university education, but he got into alcohol and ruined it. And he served as a real lesson from my parents, for my sister and me.
Sure.
It's what you do with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had also one year, and he didn't keep coming because he just, Paul the Dancing Decorator was married several wives, but he forgot about divorcing them. So
Oh,
he had a problem with that. But he redecorated my mother's jail kitchen one winter, and he stenciled leaves above the cabinets. And he used to be an Arthur Murray teacher in Minneapolis,
ah,
and so he loved to dance, and my mother loved that because she loved to put the polka music on the Motorola,
yeah.
You
in
know,
the dining room. And my father had no rhythm at all, so he didn't dance very well. So Paul and my mom had a good time.
I think it's very unusual. I can't understand how these jailbirds or whatever, the people who were supposed to be in prison, were treated like family members. And how did it come that your father would allow his daughters to be around these men? It's just, it doesn't quite compute with
Well,
me.
they really were. My mom and dad would all say, they're not bad men. They made bad choices. That's all.
Yeah.
They were very tolerant, and
Mhm.
giving second chances were very important to them.
Mm-hmm. Did you
Well,
girls ever feel unsafe around any of the prisoners?
Never, never. And one of the prisoners, Elmer, was from the state penitentiary. He'd been in the pen for a couple of years, and he was paroled out to my father. I don't know why that happened, but he brought gifts from the pen. He brought a hand tooled purse for my mother, and my dad a leather jacket that he'd
oh
done
my.
something with. I don't know what, but and he would even bring me to the movies.
Oh,
Isn't that strange?
That
And,
is
and
very strange.
my sister and I didn't remember why he was paroled to dad or anything, but
Yeah.
he was a wonderful guy, and he spent Christmases with us. But then when he was off of his parole, he went back to Nebraska, where he came from, and he got in with the wrong crowd again, and he was
Oh,
killed. He was killed in a high-speed chase after a robbery.
oh
oh.
my
So it was
God.
too bad. But
What?
even in those days,
Mm-hmm.
in the 50s, we talk about gangs today and so on, but things were not always so wonderful for a lot of kids. There were
No.
gangs also in Glenwood, and my
Mm.
dad had um, a pegboard that he had in his office with weapons that he'd taken off kids that had been shooting out mailboxes and shooting at the railroad cars that went through and robbing stuff. Um,
Mhm.
it wasn't always so great for for young kids, young boys especially. So Dad started a junior police force. By the way, I just remember that,
Oh, good.
and he got the leaders of the class to join, and they served as role models for others who wanted.
Oh, what a
It
great
was a
idea.
good idea.
Mm-hmm. Good for him. In regard to the prisoners that returned annually, did you ever have any remorse about seeing them leave after their 90 days were served? Were there tears?
No, no.
'Cause you knew they'd be back again.
Yes, that's true. Very likely. And we'd see them downtown many times. Sometimes my friend Wendy and I would be biking, and we'd stop at Dick's Pool Hall to play pool. One of the prisoners would show us how to shoot pool in the back of the recreation hall. It was a beer joint basically,
Mhm.
but we were okay. Everything was safe. It was
Oh,
it was a great town to grow up in. Everybody knew what everybody else was doing. So I guess it wouldn't be great to go back always to
No,
as
no.
an adult.
So did these men kind of give themselves up, or did your father have to say, "Well, come on, you're spending 3 months with me," or something? Do you remember? Do you know anything
I
about
think
that?
several of them were drunk, and I don't think they knew any
Oh,
better
I
Uh-huh.
see.
at the time. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Did they always go before the same judge?
Judge Selness, yeah. He
Oh.
was the county judge. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I guess it was the county judge. There was a juvenile judge too, Gilman, but not as many. Except my father had to bring my sister in front of him when he found bottles
Oh,
under the bed. That was crazy.
Oh.
oh, I bet that was an interesting family story to tell
Yes.
about later. Huh, huh. Well, Ruth, or I'm sorry, Pat, you had ahead of the broadcast, you were telling Jackie and me about some unique experiences you had even going into the 60s. And I know a lot of times our lives in the 50s certainly influenced who we were in generations after that and decades after that. Can you tell us a little bit about the 60s?
Sure. In the early 60s, my dad thought we didn't really appreciate all that we had, and we didn't have much. His salary was very low. But every Christmas time, he would bring us to Minneapolis to see all the Dayton's windows, which were just magical with the
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
displays that they put out. And he said, this Christmas, we're going to see the windows, but we're going to go down to Skid Row and spend the rest of the day.
Mhm.
He said, I want you all to, of our family, my sister and my mom and dad and me, we're going to pick out one gift for ourselves that we would like at the Salvation Army store. And then we're going to the uh, what is it called? The houses where the homeless would stay and
Mm-hmm.
talk with
The
them.
shelters? Hmm.
Shelters, yes. Salvation Army shelters and all. So we picked out, my sister picked out a doll, and I picked out a Rimsky-Korsakov record because I'd been playing in the band,
Ah,
played that, and my mom picked out a black skirt with one of those kick openings in the back, you know.
yeah, for
But
dancing.
from then on, we would have one gift for Christmas, and it was to teach us that we have so much that we need to be thankful for.
Mm-hmm. A great lesson.
Yeah.
Did you happen to pass that on when you had your children?
Yes, but they get more gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. That time in America was, I think, gift-wise influenced by the mail order catalog. Did
Mm-hmm.
you
Oh,
have,
Sears. Yes.
yes, did you have those wish books come to your home and how did you handle that?
Yes. Oh, it was wonderful. Remember the paper dolls we made out of the models
Yes.
in the Sears book? And we
Yeah.
dressed them, and oh, that was really a fun thing to have. I miss those Sears catalogs.
Sears and Pennies and Spiegels and Montgomery Wards.
Yes, that's right. And now most of them are gone, aren't they?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And just the fact that you're mentioning about playing with paper dolls, that is of, I think after the 50s, maybe mid 60s, that play toy disappeared. Paper dolls disappeared. And there was, I know Jackie and I did so much creating with paper dolls, not only the story of what the life of these paper dolls, we almost like we played house with the paper dolls, but we
Yes,
created fashions. We drew fashions and became fashion designers for these
of
dollies.
course.
Yeah.
But
And
now I
I
have a granddaughter who has paper dolls that are they have a backing so they stand up.
Okay.
yes,
Mhm.
And yes, she's doing that too. And imagination is so wonderful for children to use,
Mhm.
exactly.
creating stories.
With
Yes.
all the electronics, it is not as common for that to happen for children to use their imaginations.
Mhm.
True,
Unfortunately.
very true.
So, Pat, in the 1950s, was there a certain kind of music that you listened to or that was playing in your home?
I remember more from the 60s in the music. Most of us had, and we probably got them in the late 50s. Record players, remember?
Yes.
33 and a third,
Yes.
huge
Yeah.
record albums.
78.
Yes, 78s. That was it. Yes. And
45.
then we'd have the smaller ones. What were they called? The
45.
45s. Yes.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
that was wonderful. And we had Jerry Lee Lewis, remember?
Mhm. Great.
Yes.
Balls of
And
fire.
Johnny Mathis later.
Okay.
Mhm.
Were you an Elvis fan?
No, he was before me.
Okay.
Uh, but I have a sister-in-law who really went gaga over Elvis for sure. I
Did,
was more Johnny Mathis type. Yes.
did you have community dances?
Oh, yes. We had sock hops at the Lakeside
Oh,
Ballroom. It was wonderful.
oh,
All the kids
perfect.
would go. Yes. And then you'd hope to dance with the guy you had a crush on, of course,
Mhm,
with
mhm.
our ballet slippers. Oh, it's
And
cool.
can you tell me? I've always heard of sock hops, but tell me about them.
Oh, we even had the Everly Brothers play at the Lakeside Ballroom one year, one
Whoa.
summer. And that was Phil and Don, right? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
this was like Lake Minnetonka, Lakeside?
Yep, on Lake. Yes, that's exactly it. With the knotty pine inside and
Okay.
the spinning silver ball in the ceiling,
Mhm.
Oh.
and all the windows would be open to the lake so the breezes would come in because there was no air conditioning, of
Uh,
course, in
it
those
was.
days.
Mhm.
Oh, so you would sweat profusely, I'm sure, with all the dancing of the bunny hop and the,
Yeah.
oh boy, yeah,
And
that
and
was
so
fun.
did people actually take off their shoes all the time when they're dancing? Is that why it was called a sock hop?
Probably, I think it probably came from Dick Clark's bandstand, don't you think?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
In Philadelphia with Annette Funicello
Yeah.
Yep.
and Bobby, and everybody had to rush home after school
Yeah.
to watch American Bandstand at 4.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great to get the latest on what's the cool style and what's the latest music out, and
Yeah. That's for
that was
sure.
wonderful.
Pat, did you ever go roller skating?
No, my cousins in Bruton, another town 17 miles away, they had a roller skating rink, but Glenwood didn't have one. We went bowling,
Okay.
Mm.
but no roller skating, unfortunately. But
How
we
about
did
ice skating?
ice
I'm s-
skating. Oh, that was great. We loved that. Yes. And they flooded the football rink in the winter, and there
Oh,
was a warming house there with
huh.
a stove of some kind where we'd put our wet mittens, to warm
Mhm.
up.
Mhm.
And I remember sitting there and getting your skates pulled so your toes didn't ache, so they were frozen probably by that
mhm,
time.
mhm.
But and there was music that came from the warming house for the skating outdoors.
Oh,
So
fun.
we would do figure eights, and the grapevine was good. I was good at that. And then kids would play crack the whip,
Oh,
and
sure.
you'd want to be at the very end because you'd get tossed into a snowbank. It was really fun. Yeah,
Did you want to be at the end with a
I
boy?
like that. Well, why not? Yes.
It had to be at
Well,
the
in
end.
the 50s, we also had hay rides.
Yeah.
Oh, sure,
That was fun. Yeah.
sure. Yes.
Especially when you became a teenager,
Yeah. You
then
could
your
snuggle in the
hormones were
hay.
raging. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, on those hay rides, was the wagon pulled by a tractor or by a team of horses?
I think it was a tractor. But
Mhm.
my uncle worked at he was foreman at the university in Morris. Uh, and he had horses with a sleigh. And
Mm.
when my Aunt Ruth would have the Christmas gathering of the family, all the cousins would pile into the sleigh,
Oh, fun.
and go through the town of Morris. That was a really wonderful time. And then we end up in the basement. There was an old piano that my cousin Beverly would play, and Lois would sing, and all the cousins down there, and we'd sing Christmas carols. That was really exciting. Good times, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Special times.
Did you ever go caroling throughout the neighborhood?
Yeah, from a church, youth groups.
Mm-hmm.
I think we went to the nursing homes and to the shut-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember much about that, but that happened around Christmas time. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In thinking back to the members of the jail at that during that Christmas season, was there anything special that was given to the folks who were residents of the jail at Christmas time, or was there a special meal offered to them, or did they have guests come to visit them?
No, Verdi, I mean, Blackie, the Indian, had a mother, Nicotine Nellie, who would visit once in a while. She had these long, long gray braids. And I'd see her downtown every once in a while, picking up used cigarette butts from the sidewalk to have a little smoke. But no, I don't remember others. But I do remember one Christmas, I think it was Blackie that was with us around the Christmas tree, and maybe Paul and Verdi. My parents were really good about including them because they never misbehaved, really, when they were at the jail. But I don't think anybody got gifts. I don't remember any.
Can you remember a prisoner who was maybe the most fearsome, or in that your dad had to house?
I remember one committed suicide. One hung himself.
Oh my!
In the jail, and that really upset my father. That was very hard on him. My dad had got ulcers throughout his 20 years as a sheriff there, and he really, at the end, he really didn't like the job at all. He always bought a farm where he could just go out and plow the fields. He'd rent the farm out, but he'd plow fields. I think as a get rid of some of the nervous energy he had.
Sure.
It was taxing.
Yes. And when he left the service as a county sheriff, did he choose to go into retirement, or did he do other work?
Well, yes, he lost the election after 20 years. There was a rivalry between the towns at both sides of the lake, Starbuck and Glenwood. And the people, and it all had to do with the NFO, the National Farmers Organization at the time. There were, my dad said there was bad farmers that were causing the problem. Some of them were dumping the milk that was being transported. And anyway, the Starbuck ran a candidate against my father who was pro NFO, and Dad was against it. And the guy won by a few votes. However, he screwed up the whole. There was a boat that you had to. We had several lakes in Pope County that had to be checked on for fishing, I suppose, if they had license and all that. But he screwed up the county people came to my dad and asked him about coming back, and my dad said no, I'm done with that. And he actually, his ulcers flared up again, and he had to go to the Veterans Hospital, and he died at 61, not even retirement age.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
It's a stressful job.
Is the jail still the same today as it was for you when your family lived there?
No, it's torn down. It doesn't meet the regulations anymore.
Okay.
But the prisoners are different too, I'm sure. They're much
Yeah.
more violent, perhaps. I don't know.
Mhm.
Is there a jail there, a new jail, or do they go somewhere else?
I don't know. There is in the courthouse, they have extended some of the lower level. I think they've created a jail there. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Viewers, we want to remind you that our guest today is Pat Spilseth from Wayzata, Minnesota, and what a very interesting story she had growing up in the 1950s. And Pat, there are two questions I always like to ask our guests as we wrap up each broadcast. And one is, on the top of your head, what can you recall as a fun memory of the 1950s?
Oh, I think you hit on it with the sock hops. They were really fun. And also how I lived in the jail, but the kids liked to come there. We liked to play in the jail upstairs. The women's jail was upstairs and the men's jail downstairs. And the women's jail was usually empty. But so then the kids would go up there and play cops and robbers, and imagine stuff. That was fun.
Yes, yes. And from that 1950s decade, what has been influential in your life as an adult?
I think the lessons my parents taught us, uh, it was very important that my sister and I go to college after high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very important that we learn to be tolerant of others that were different.
Mm-hmm.
The prisoners were always given another chance. My mom kept saying, they're not bad men, they just made bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
And both my sister Barbie and I think, live by that. We think people are inherently good, and to give people second chances.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. Good for you. I tell you, those parents are pretty influential in children's lives, aren't they?
True, very true.
Yes.
Yes.
Viewers, we've had a wonderful time today visiting with our guest this week, Pat Spilseth. She had a phenomenal life, an unusual life for many people, just in her housing accommodations. But we hope you've enjoyed watching this and have gained something from it to learn about the 1950s. Your life may not have been a series of sock hops, or maybe even a cool car, or what about those malt chops in Green Rivers? But it certainly, of the times of that decade of 1950s, was influential, no matter how you look back upon it. And Jackie, how can we wrap up this week's broadcast?
We can wrap it up by reminding people to press that red subscribe button, and as well as that blue thumbs up button, and to tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat. Now, this will go live recorded, let's say, Central Time, 8 o'clock on Monday evenings. However, if you don't happen to catch it at that time, you can go to the YouTube channel, or it's on our Fun Chat. It's on our website under 1950s Fun Chat. And the website is right down there below. Copy it down, wildwindmillwatched.com. So
right.
Until next time, toodaloo.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank